get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Alan Barr. I'm with COEH Northern California, and on behalf of the NIOSH-supported education and research centers throughout the country, we're very pleased to bring you another installment of the 2025 ERC Ergonomics webinar series, where we offer free monthly webinars on various topics on human factors and ergonomics. This collaborative effort on behalf of each ERC's continuing education program aspires to provide access to current research supported through NIOSH ERC programs. If you log in today with your registration email, you'll receive a link to an evaluation form that will qualify you for a certificate of completion worth 1 continuing education contact hour. If you'd like to ask questions regarding today's webinar, please enter your questions into the Q&A. We'll save time at the end of the presentation to address those questions to the best of our ability. Today's webinar is being recorded and it will be made available along with past webinars on the COEH Northern California YouTube channel. In support of our work, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel. It really helps. A PDF of the presentation can be requested directly from coehce@berkeley.edu. That's coehce@berkeley.edu. Topic today, the title, OSHA Ergonomics, History, Enforcement, and Success Stories. Our speaker today is Marc Vargas. Marc is a CIH and has an MPH. He has over 28 years of experience in occupational safety and health. He began his career in '96 as a safety director in the resource recovery power plant industry, where he oversaw heavy equipment installation and repair. In '97, he joined OSHA as a field office safety and industrial hygienist inspector, later serving with the New York region's technical support team, where he focused on warehousing ergonomics investigations and enforcement. Today, Marc works in OSHA's National Office of Health Enforcement, specializing in assisting and administering ergonomics outreach and enforcement across OSHA field offices nationwide. Over the course of his career, he has investigated a wide range of industries and workplaces. His experience includes a construction case involving multiple fatalities that led to criminal prosecution of the company owner, infectious disease investigations in hospitals, ergonomics evaluations in nursing homes, process safety management inspections in chemical manufacturing, and serving as lead investigator in OSHA's first ergonomics-related 5A1 citation issued for baggage handlers in the airline industry. So we have a real depth of knowledge here. And with that, it's my pleasure to hand the mic over to you, Marc. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Alan. And thank you for this opportunity to speak about OSHA ergonomics enforcement and success stories. So we are pleased to present this presentation. And thank you also for that introduction. So yes, I was a safety and then industrial hygiene compliance officer, first in South Florida, then out of Manhattan, New York area office, and then in New Jersey. And yes, I've done safety, health, general industry, construction, and some federal facility inspections for 26 years. My ergonomics experience includes the airlines industry case that you mentioned. That was the first ergonomic citation issued to the airlines industry for baggage handlers. I also got involved with the Amazon ergonomics inspections that you can find in OSHA's press releases website and online search engines. There is more information on Amazon. OSHA settled those cases in a corporate-wide settlement agreement, and we are still addressing ergonomics concerns and issues in Amazon facilities via the corporate-wide settlement alternate dispute resolution procedures. And I am now with National Office Directorate of Enforcement Programs, Office of Health Enforcement in ergonomics, and provide support to the field offices for ergonomics inspections. So with that, what are ergonomics injuries or musculoskeletal disorders, MSDs? They are cumulative injuries to soft tissues such as muscles, tendons, ligaments, and the spine, from awkward postures such as bending forward and backward, reaching above the torso, shoulder, or head, and other forceful, repetitive actions at a fast pace for long durations. Other causes are vibration transmitted to the body, such as from tools like impact wrenches, and contact stress, such as kneeling to do low work for long durations. Negative psychosocial stressors, such as irregular and long work shifts, isolation, short staffing, and lack of job security, also contribute to physical stress and increase the likelihood of MSDs. 1/3 of all industries, as we see in the lower bullets on this slide, are MSDs and can be more costly in terms of absenteeism, lost productivity, workers' compensation claims, surgery, and disability, as opposed to other types of acute injuries. Direct medical costs in the US are 20 billion per year, and indirect costs to business and in the United States from the time and resources required to manage claims, lost productivity, and replacing injured workers can be as much as fivefold, $100 billion per year. MSDs occur from tissue microtears over time, and without adequate rest and recovery, the body can't repair itself if the worker repeats the work day after day, week after week, even working part-time and sometimes working overtime. Low back injuries are the most common, with bulging disc herniation as a severe outcome. Other injuries include shoulder rotator cuff tear and arm and hand injuries such as carpal tunnel syndrome, that is compression of that nerve in the wrist, de Quervain's, that is a hand inflammation order from the thumb that can radiate up the arm, and epicondylitis, the clinical term for tennis elbow. Most of us have experienced some type of shoulder, back, or other type of strain or sprain. Some injuries become chronic and debilitating, as serious as acute injuries from falls or struck bys or caught between, such as caught between machinery, that will affect your normal abilities and quality of life. I hope none of us have suffered a chronic ergonomic injury requiring surgery, but I did want to preface this meeting by telling you about one severe and debilitating injury of a colleague whose condition became so severe he would walk into the office doubled over in pain to get to his desk. This colleague was gracious enough to have an interview with me and myself, and so I'll just briefly recount what happened. So he's relatively young still. He was in the military, worked on maintenance repair of helicopters, requiring awkward postures and carrying heavy toolboxes and other bending, lifting, and physically demanding tasks. Towards the end of his service in 2009, he had his first episode of severe back pain where he could not walk and had to crawl to the car in this first episode to get to an emergency room. He improved, but didn't address his condition and then worked in construction and as a mechanic. His condition worsened. He had several more severe episodes. And again, having that instantaneous severe pain, he became essentially disabled, unable to work or engage with his family and kids. This is when I got to know him, as when he was having at this worst point in his injury, again walking into the office at uh, a greater than 45-degree angle. It's just really tough to see someone suffering that much. After cortisone injections that stopped helping, he finally agreed to surgery in 2023, and this was for the disc herniation and severe pain into the left leg. And with physical therapy, recovery, treatment, and healing, he recovered and now takes care of his health and body through stretching, exercise, and nutrition. I won't forget the day he walked into the office upright without pain, and we were so happy for him and happy he recovered. This was a, well, 12, 13, 14-year ordeal for this colleague of ours, but we are thrilled he is better. And just recounting this story to illustrate the severity of MSD injuries. OSHA investigates workplaces with high rates of ergonomic injuries in industries such as healthcare, warehousing, and manufacturing. Most of the ergonomics inspections we do are complaints, but we also have a warehouse national emphasis program and a healthcare initiative and a new animal slaughtering industry inspection guidance. These programs can initiate an ergo inspection as well. In any inspection, if we observe ergonomic hazards and also review 300 log illness and injury documents that indicate high or increasing ergonomic injuries, OSHA can proceed to do an ergo inspection. So we are going to discuss OSHA's ergonomics enforcement history, enforcement procedures, and 3 success stories. This slide is the image or the Ergo Success Stories webpage. OSHA has 42 success stories published in this website in a variety of industries. The 2 industry categories shown are 2 of the many industry group links shown on the website, where you will find the 3 success stories we present today. Some are OSHA investigations, and others are private companies that have posted their success story directly to the website on their own. Any submission goes through a review process courtesy of our health response team at the Salt Lake Technical Center and then is posted on the website. If you need any assistance in applying, reach out to your area office, go to the website, and my contact email is in the document we're sharing, and feel free to reach out to me as well to discuss the submission of a success story. And Alan, if you could let me know, or the host let me know if everything is going well and you can still hear me, because just
Yes,
to let me
Mark,
know. Oh,
it looks and sounds excellent. Please continue.
great, thank you. OSHA has a long history of investigations and enforcement and ergonomic hazards starting in the late 70s. Kodak and Samsonite were the earliest ergonomics inspections. These were early willful multi-million dollar citation penalty cases in meat packing, such as Iowa beef and John Morrell beef and pork processing. Meat packing includes MSD hazards such as evisceration parts and harvesting and hand trimming of meat cuts. Automotive cases include a Chrysler General Motors case and this Ford Motors case at the bottom bullet that required the companies to implement programs including, so this, after these cases, the settlements occurred, these companies were required to implement ergonomics programs as part of the settlements. That included job hazard analysis, hazard controls, employee training, and medical management. The automakers' improvements in ergonomics programs led to reduced hazards and injuries. In addition, their workers' compensation insurance bills also fell significantly. So, besides reductions of insurance costs and injury and suffering of the workers, another advantage and win-win for both the employer and the workers can be concurrent increases in efficiency and production. OSHA investigates hazardous workplaces, can issue a money penalty citation as part of that enforcement, and obligates the employer to decrease employee injuries and advises feasible abatements appropriate for the workstations and hazards. In response, the proactive, the smart employer will devote time and resources to reduce ergonomic hazards, which can also result in improved workplace organization and process flow, reducing the number of motions, shortening motion distances, making those motions easier that those employees doing manual work are performing, and reducing injury rates. The employer often also realizes improvements in work cycle time and overall productivity, throughput, and profit. For us as safety professionals, this is a motivator to get management commitment, which is an important part and aspect of a successful ergonomics program. The fight for an OSHA ergonomic standard was long and arduous, beginning with those big enforcement cases. 30 affiliated unions petitioned OSHA to issue an emergency temporary standard in 1991. Rulemaking followed with the eventual issuance of the standard in January 2001, and then repealed by Congress. So after the repeal of this standard, OSHA responded with a comprehensive plan to reduce ergonomic hazards to workers via a four-pronged approach of guidelines, enforcement, outreach, and research of ergonomic hazards by NIOSH into specific industries such as meat processing and warehousing. So what is a general duty clause violation for ergonomics, and what other actions can OSHA take? A general duty clause violation for ergonomics and all general duty clause violations requires four elements: hazards that cause disabling injuries, recognition. The employer has to have knowledge. The employer has to know about the hazard, and they typically do via the 300 logs they complete with high percentages of ergonomic injuries, observations and direction of the work, and also filling workers' comp cases. The, and the employer fails to address the workplace hazard. They fail to with knowledge, address the hazards in the workplace. And fourth, in the first bullet point, there are feasible abatements the employer can implement to reduce the hazards, but they do not. Those cases where one or more of the elements is not strong, such as, for instance, the employer implemented some measures, provided some training, or the MSD injury rates are not increasing, but there are still deficiencies and improvements they can make, OSHA makes recommendations to the employer in an ergonomic hazard alert letter. The push for inspections after the repeal resulted in 1,200 ergo inspections in 2003 alone, the majority in nursing homes due to the Nursing Home National Emphasis Program. Those stats aren't shown in this slide, but this stat is also since 2001, OSHA conducted just short of 7,100 ergonomics inspections in total, and 60 ergo actual citations issued to employers since 2001. This slide with the green bars is the number of ergonomics inspections in recent history. And this slide with the blue bars shows the ergonomic hazard alert letters issued. So OSHA has issued over 1,100 ergonomic hazard alert letters from 2001 to 2024. So this is part of no standard, but that the OSHA has had an active ergonomics enforcement policy and successful attempt to address and reduce ergonomic hazards and improve workplaces in the United States. Moving on to Beverly and Pepperidge Farm. Beverly Enterprises and Pepperidge Farm are two cases that created precedents in OSHA's ergonomics enforcement. So first with Beverly. Beverly established industry practices and standards in nursing home and assisted living facilities in the US. And Pepperidge established case law that if the employer attempts one or some ergonomic measures, that OSHA may have to consider these measures and allow them to take effect in lieu of citing. So in Beverly, and this slide focuses on Beverly, OSHA conducted 5 inspections that were contested by the employer. In any OSHA case, the employer can disagree with OSHA and contest the case that leads to a court trial. After 10 years of litigation, OSHA arrived at a corporate-wide settlement agreement that required them to implement a robust ergonomics program. The agreement included providing engineering controls such as mechanical lift and friction reducing devices and belt devices, the management of these devices, training managers and employees in safe lifting and transfer and repositioning, and written programs with program documentation and incident investigations. This Beverly settlement required them to implement these programs in 800 facilities nationwide. It was an overwhelming success for the workers, for the industry, for the employees, and the patients and residents in these facilities, since improving work conditions translate to improved care and service to patients. Pepperidge Farms is the food company we all know that make breads, baked goods, cookies, and cakes. This inspection included ergonomic and record-keeping citations, including 389 willful citations of repetitive motion with an initial total penalty of $1.4 million. There were high rates of injuries, including employees who suffered back strains and carpal tunnel that required surgery. Citations were issued for two hazards, the lifting and the repetitive motion. And a willful citation is the employer willfully disregarded the hazards, and that citation is 10 times a serious citation as far as money penalty. So the first type of hazard, lifting hazards. The lifting hazards were the employees lifted 100-pound bags of sugar, 120-pound roll stock, and 68-pound butter blocks. Roll stock are large rolls of material, such as paper or packaging, rolled onto large cardboard tubes like a giant paper towel roll that have to be lifted into machines that process and, for instance, print the package labels. OSHA also cited the second, repetitive motion in upper extremity, which would be the hand, grip, and upper arm repetitive motion of, in this case, cookie line work, where workers were measured making 20,800 daily repetitions as an average each. So their average per worker was that many daily repetitions and movements and motions. In this settlement, Pepperidge reported that 28 employees underwent 42 separate surgical procedures, including 32 carpal tunnel releases. This is the severity of what the employees are experiencing and suffering when there can be ergonomic improvements that are made. So, and remember feasible abatements. There were many improvements that Pepperidge could do to reduce the lifting hazards with these lifting of extreme weights, such as raising the height of the sugar bags before, instead of lifting them from the floor, cutting the bags or separating the 100-pound bags into two 50-pound bags, so reducing it by half, using lift assist devices such as vacuum lift devices to dump the bags, and eliminating lifting of sugar altogether by incorporating that ingredient into the bulk ingredients metering process. Roll stock, these giant rolls, heavy rolls, was addressed with dollies designed to store and move them without lifting, and mechanical lift devices called web dollies that insert a pin into the roll and hydraulically lift the roll into the required installation location, which would be an elevated location in a machine. The lifting citation was sustained in the litigation. However, the judge did not sustain the citations for the repetitive injuries from repetitive cookie line work that resulted from the high rate of frequency or duration of the repetitions because the employer implemented job rotations and other process and location improvements prior to the issuance of the citations. So again, lifting citations were approved, but the citations for repetitive motion hazards were not. So this Pepperidge Farm case requires OSHA to carefully consider all of the evidence in any investigation, including any of the improvements the employer has attempted and evidence of the severity of the hazard, such as the rapidly increasing injury rates, severity of injuries, how many work-related injuries require surgery and long-term recovery, and feasibility of corrections. In some cases, there is much more that they can do, whereas citation is appropriate. In other cases, that what they are doing things that, again, OSHA must, in consideration of a case, has to consider to decide if the full citation and pursuing the citation is appropriate. So let's move on to the three success stories. Missouri Slope Lutheran Care Center is a nursing home residential care facility located in North Dakota, which is confusing. It's called Missouri Slope because the Missouri River runs near this location. It opened in 1967 and expanded to a total of 256 beds. They now have around 500 employees, and as you will see in photos, new construction allowed improvements in engineering controls, and they submitted their own success story to OSHA. Nursing home and assisted living facility patient handling hazards are many. And there are many solutions that have become industry standard as discussed in the Beverly case. Nurses and certified nursing assistant healthcare employees, CNAs, manually lift and transfer patients from their beds to wheelchairs, showers, toilet, and chairs, assist them to get to social and dining activities, and also move them as required for physical therapy and wound and skin friction avoidance. They will help the residents walk and will try to stop their falls. Residents can have complicating factors such as on the second side of the slide, continual IV. They can be heavy in weight and size, be unable to communicate, and get angry and combative. A facility can lack adequate patient assist equipment or get behind in maintaining that equipment, have low staffing or employee to patient ratios as recommended. There can be CNA staff shortages, and it can be a stressful job leading to burnout and absenteeism. But also, I'd like to mention, because we're talking about these patients, the, I've done nursing home inspections, and something that I'll never forget, for instance, it isn't a nursing home, it was a VA. I remember interviewing an employee who was ready to retire after something like 2 decades of work, and she said, I do it for the veterans. I do it for my patients. She worked in housekeeping for those many years, but that was, a labor of love. And the same thing in another nursing home. I remember talking to some of the employees that it gave them such, it was a labor of love to help these patients uh, that are older in nursing homes and taking care of them and giving them the best quality of life that they can. Nursing home and assisted living facility ergonomic programs are similar to ergonomics programs that apply to all workplaces and are well established. You will hear these terms repeated throughout this presentation. Management commitment, employee participation in committees and hazard analysis and solutions, selecting equipment, establishing safe work procedures, training management and employees in equipment and work practices, and continually evaluating the program to troubleshoot problems with new solutions. And we have the engineering portion of this slide that I am going to go a little bit further into detail. In this slide, patient handling equipment engineering controls include fixed or mobile body lifts, sit to stand lifts, jerry or reclining chairs that facilitate transfer to and from bed, wheeled walking assists, toilet and shower chairs, and gait belts that a CNA can use to help walk a patient. These photos are from the OSHA nursing home guidelines as in the OSHA website. And in your handout, that web page is, you will have access to that web page. Missouri Slope had a high rate of injuries, including ergonomic injuries. In 1990, an employee had a 1 in 7 chance of suffering an MSD. Workers' compensation insurance providers rate a company with something called an experience modification rate, or EMR. An EMR of 1.0 means there are average claims for that industry with no penalty or discount. An EMR of 1.3 means the company pays 30% more in annual premiums. An EMR of 0.7 means that the company gets a 30% discount on their insurance bill. So as the bullet points indicate, their 1997 premiums had an EMR of 1.55. They had to pay 55%, 0.5% more of their insurance bill because of this high EMR. And North Dakota State, as well as some other states, provide safety and health grants for employers in certain industries to improve their safety and health and ergonomics programs. And Missouri Slope took advantage of these state programs. So going further into this EMR concept and costs, this slide shows Missouri Slope's EMR and surcharge or discount history. This facility clearly aggressively improved their safety and health and ergonomics program to achieve EMRs of 0.6 achieving a 37.6 discount in 2023. So this is a very dramatic illustration of how a aggressive, robust ergonomics program results in not only reductions in injuries and improvements in the workplace, but also the bottom line in the company's profit. Among the many improvements that Missouri Slope made are complete management commitment, zero lift policy, always requiring mechanical lifts with 2 employees required for any lift device transfer, a practice skills lab designed like a residence room to train new hires, and participatory ergonomics. The chance of an employee suffering an MSD decreased to 1 in 50. This employer applied for and achieved OSHA Voluntary Protection Program status since 2010. Voluntary Protection Program VPP is a cooperative agreement between OSHA and participating employers that have outstanding safety and health programs. These facilities typically achieve over 50% reductions in their DART rates, days away and restricted transfer rates, compared to their industry average DART rates. Any employer can apply for an initial audit through the OSHA VPP website. If they are accepted, they can advertise and promote their VPP status. There are 3 levels: demonstration, merit, or star. That is the highest status, and are exempt from OSHA program inspections while they maintain their VPP status. There are many types of industries in this program, including Missouri Slope, such as power and utilities, manufacturing, chemical, and even government employers. One example of a government employer is Naval Base Kitsap, which is a military facility in Keyport, Washington. These are Missouri Slope's record-keeping data that shows their improvements. OSHA's record-keeping standard requires many employers to maintain OSHA 300 logs that include total case injury rate and DART days away restricted transfer rates. Severity rates can also be calculated from these injuries documented in these logs. DART, which I've already mentioned, is the number of days away and restricted days experienced by the facility for every 100 employees. TCIR is the total case incident rate per 100 employees. As you can see, Missouri Slope has consistently maintained low TCIR and DART rates, 50% below the BLS average for nursing homes. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes the average total and DART rates for all types of industries, and a company can compare their rates to BLS rates. Moving on to the specific improvements that Missouri Slope made. Their new construction allowed planning for permanent lifts installed in every room. They obtained a building and zoning waiver to run this lift track, not only above the bed, but to travel to other areas of the room, including the bathroom and the shower. They made improvements facility-wide to other departments such as laundry, where it's deposited into a chute that arrives to the laundry room at an optimal lifting and handling height, approximately 30 inches from the floor, as opposed to carts where employees would have to stoop into a cart low to the ground to lift laundry. Wet laundry is very heavy. Speaking of these carts, and these carts have a spring-loaded floor. Clean linen carts have cutouts to allow easier access that doesn't require a 45 or more degree bend to lift. In environmental services, they acquired ride-along and walk-along vacuuming and wet cleaning machines for the floor maintenance workers. That would reduce the push and pull forces and hazards that these employees engage in. In a facility that feeds over 200 residents, imagine how busy the kitchen is. They installed spigots directly over the stove burners to reduce carrying large, heavy stock pots. Missouri Slope provided us with more updates to their program, including post-incident communications with injured employees, continuing ergo and hazard assessments, new backpack vacuums for the cleaning staff, and continue to take advantage of the state's grants to fund these improvements. When an OSHA inspector conducts an inspection this slide is talking about the patient handling guidelines that would require a OSHA compliance officer to investigate these 5 hazards, including MSDs or ergonomic injuries. So when an OSHA inspector conducts an inspection in these NAICS codes at our hospitals and nursing and residential care facilities, this they have to investigate these 5 high-rate hazards in these industries, which is walking working surfaces, tuberculosis, bloodborne pathogens, workplace violence, and ergonomics. There is a multi-drug resistant tuberculosis now that would include a review of the facility's inspection control programs and procedures as well currently, which is um, important and has been a development now for a while. OSHA has a vast library of safety and health industry information, e-tools, standards, and guidance, such as this guidelines for nursing homes. I already mentioned it in a previous slide, and you have access to, again, this and many, many other guidance documents. And this is the address for the webpage to get to this particular document. Moving on to our next featured employer success story, that is Titan X Engine Cooling, a Swedish company founded in 1895 that is now a global corporation with over 1,000 employees in 8 locations. They manufacture heat transfer equipment such as radiator cores used in diesel truck engines. This success story started as a complaint inspection for ergonomics hazards. The employees have to lift these radiator cores that can weigh up to 120 pounds, but average in the 50-pound range, up to hooks. If you look at the photo on the to the left, they have to lift the radiator cores up to these hooks on a track that move at a slow speed and carry them through the paint enclosure on an overhead track. Ergonomic, so yes. The ergonomic hazards were determined, but the entirety of the evidence did not support pursuit of a general duty clause violation. Rather, an ergonomic hazard alert letter, also called EHAL, was issued to the employer. This is a letter that was issued, and this print is very small, but I'm going to go into the details. EHALs often include the DART injury and MSD injury rates and severity rates. And severity rates are the number of days away or restricted transfer that employees that result from injuries that occur per 100 employees. We can narrow these rates only to MSD injuries per 100 employees or to of the population of a specific department, such as dock truck workers that manually load trucks. Severity is, again, the number of days away and restricted duty days experienced by the employees also per 100 employees. The EHAL has a summary statement of the existing hazards. In this case, the language is of the weight being lifted with awkward postures and in which departments that it's occurring. The EHAL also lists recommendations. There are general recommendations, many of which mirror the ergonomic program elements already stated, such as management commitment, developing an ergo program, hazard ID, feasible abatement measures, and employee participation in safety and ergo committees, and training employees and managers in ergonomic principles, hazards, and work practices to reduce injuries, the signs and symptoms and importance of early reporting of ergonomic related injuries. The EHAL also recommends has site-specific recommendations, such as how workstation redesign can reduce the weight and height of radiator cores lifted, color-coded stickers to identify those cores that exceed the safe weight one worker can lift. Now, 2-person lifts are required for all cores exceeding 35 pounds, and a below the hook device allows a one-person transfer as long as it is designed correctly for the specific part. If you look at it closely, it has a lock-in-place washer. It has to operate and hook that radiator core securely to be used. But these are improvements that Titan X has made into their ergonomics program. These would be engineering controls and work practice controls with two-person lifts. The employer provided a tiltable cart for employees as well to increase the origin lift height of the cores and allow a zero lift to hook the core. Two pallet lifts were purchased to adjust the height of packages they load finished cores into, also to reduce extreme bending and reaching. Extreme bending and reaching into a tall box. Other parts that arrive in boxes are placed on carts and stacked pallets to allow torso level reaching and eliminate extreme bending into the tall box. Here, this is the tall box slide. Titan X also implemented ergo training to employees and supervisors. So I'm off my slide here a little bit. Other parts that arrive in boxes are placed on carts and stacked pallets. So this is the placement on carts and stacked pallets. Another ergonomic improvement. Again, as you see, to avoid reaching into the box, where to retrieve these parts at a much more optimal height at the torso level. Titan X implemented ergo training to employees and supervisors, a checklist to address manual handling processes, and encouraged union and employee participation in safety meetings. So these are all of the improvements Titan X made in response to the OSHA Inspection and Ergonomic Hazard Alert Letter. Titan X's DART rates went from 5 in 2022 to 1.09 as of June of last year, and a 31% reduction, which is a 31% reduction. The MSD DART went from 3.9 in 2022 to 1.9 in 2024 for that same period, which was a 48% reduction. These are the injury reduction and MSD injury reductions that this facility realized by implementing all of these ergonomic program engineering and administrative control improvements. So one more ergonomic success story, which was a simpler complaint and improvement. Ducommun is an aerospace and defense contractor that makes precision electronics and stretch and thermal formed components, founded in the mid-1800s and now has 25 employees in 16 locations, one outside the US. This was also a complaint to OSHA for ergonomic hazards. Simply, workers in the Hudson Valley facility heat treat department had to lift heavy baskets of metal parts out of a quench tank using a long pole that forced the worker to complete the lift with one hand. The configuration of the workstation made lifting heavier baskets that would be loaded with metal parts and large odd-shaped parts a greater ergonomic hazards. And that was the situation with this workstation, but other workstations in the facility had hoists for parts. A heat treat operator suffered an injury in 2021 and was re-injured in 2022. The severity data here is the indicator in this case because their overall DART rates are below national averages. So here you see that severity rate of the number of days away restricted transferred per 100 employees, and in 2021 was high. That can be that includes or attributed to this injury that occurred in 2021 of the heat treat operator. The EHAL discussed the ergonomic hazards to the back, shoulders, and arms from repetitive and forceful lifting and twisting with extended reaches using the lift pole. And the water itself, as you lift this basket out of the quench tank, the water itself creates additional drag depending on the size and shape of the parts. Here's the video of the operation and photo of the pole used that led to the injuries. So you can, I'm going to play the video, and we've confirmed that we do have audio. So again, remember that, and you will see that uh, the worker has to lift this basket that would be full of metal parts with one hand and the use of the lift pole. So here we go. And if you could let me know after the video plays that you were successfully able to see it.
All right, started. Started? Yep.
Okay, thank you. Great, thank you for those thumbs ups. So this eHAL provided general recommendations of ergonomic principles and specific ergonomic training, hazard identification, safe work practices, early reporting, and oops, specific recommendations of workstation analysis, basket redesign, installation of a hoist, complete recording of injuries, because, okay, so recording of injuries. Complete recording of injuries. In this inspection, it was determined a record-keeping issue or violation dropped off. In record keeping, OSHA has a 6-month statute of limitations. So that was included. Record keeping was included in the recommendations in the EHAL. And they also, the EHAL also recommended pre-shift or work break staff stretching. The employer, Ducommun, conducted more ergonomic assessments. These are all of the recommendations that they did, and then they responded by conducting more ergonomic assessments. They provided site-specific manual handling training with practical demonstrations, and oh, so this is the slide. They conducted ergonomic task assessments, strengthened their ergonomics program, as I said, with practical demonstrations, awareness training for employees upon onboarding and annually thereafter. And the employer also installed a hoist at the quench tank for the heat treat operators to use. Here it is. So this is the new hoist for the quench tank installed at this workstation. Ducommun, as you saw from the data already shared, already had low DART rates, but the severity rate went to 0 and remains at 0. So the second bullet point, the facility severity rate went from 13.12 in 2022 to 0.0 in 2023, and those heat treat department DARTs and severity rates remain at 0. Thank you for the hand claps. And something else, something that is also it's important to discuss is that hazard alert letters, OSHA issues hazard alert letters for any uh, safety or health hazard that we can't necessarily issue a citation for under the standards or even general duty clause, or doesn't rise to the level. For ergonomic hazard alert letters, we request and require follow-ups. So the in 1 year after the employer receives an ergonomic hazard alert letter, the area office will follow up with communicating with the managers of that facility, and we request that the employer provide a report of the implementation of their ergonomics program and data and anything else that they can share. DoCommon and Titan X responded with all of the improvements that they made with our 1 year follow-up to the ergonomic hazard alert letter, and they provided many of these improvements as I explained in these the second two success stories. So um, this is it's something that's important to understand, that an ergonomic hazard alert letter requires a follow-up in 1 year. If the employer doesn't respond, um, they don't, they don't communicate with us, then the area director and area office has a discretion of um, requesting again, requesting again, and eventually can conduct another inspection based on their non-response. So this web address at the bottom of this slide, you'll be able to further read um, about the hazard alert letter policy that OSHA has for ergonomics. In other types of hazard alert letters, I mean, the employers typically will implement immediately whatever the corrections that hopefully immediately whatever the corrections um, were are brought out or illustrated or determined and explained in a hazard alert letter. The benefits of a robust safety and health and ergonomics program are many. Happier and more productive employees, reduction in absenteeism and turnover, reduction in workers' compensation surcharges and insurance bills, increased process flow throughput, and in the private sector, profit as well, in addition to all of these other benefits and reductions in injuries. And again, reducing the costs of these injuries in the US. Again, the statistics of direct medical costs and the indirect medical costs that can be fivefold or $100 billion per year. OSHA has a Safety Pays online tool for employers to estimate the cost of injuries and potential savings in the Safety Pays calculator. You require your 300A from record keeping, and it's specific to the NAICS code and workers' compensation insurance costs and deductible. And this concludes the presentation. So thank you very much. And if I could have some questions, or if there are questions, and Alan, should I stop sharing?
No, you're welcome to leave that on, Mark. That's fine to leave that splash informational splash screen. Thank you for that very interesting talk. That was great to hear success stories of the realized potential for risk reduction. That was very cool. I do have some questions for you. We have maybe about 5 minutes remaining. If anyone would like to ask a question, please drop it into the online Q&A. I'm going to kick it off with one policy question for you. Are you able to comment on the proposed rule from OSHA that would exclude certain occupations from the general duty clause if the hazards are deemed inherent to the job? The named occupations are primarily athletes and performers, but the request for comment probes whether or not it could extend to any industry. What would this mean for 5A1 citations?
Thank you for that question. So yes, there is a proposal, and you can look it up in the Federal Register of I guess you could say exempting certain types of hazards in sports is one, and there is a list of other types of uh, one is what is it journalism, extreme journalism. So uh, entertainment. Entertainment is another one. So there is a proposal that the general duty clause, the use of OSHA's general duty clause would be limited in those types of hazards, which are occupational hazards. However, the general duty clause traditionally is issued for um, ergonomics, workplace violence, heat, and it is illustrated and detailed in discussions of this that those would be retained, but this is a proposal and is in the work. So that's how I would answer the question is there is a list of such as sports, um, journalism in dangerous situations and entertainment that would be the focus of such types of exemptions.
Okay, thank you. Somebody was curious as to whether or not any citations were issued specifically using the NIOSH lifting equation or other accepted assessment tools.
Yes, absolutely. The so OSHA's ergonomics cases, as we develop the cases, and for instance, some of the cases that I discussed at the beginning, such as uh, the Pepperidge Farm and Beverly Enterprise, would have used and back lifting, measuring the hazard of the back lifting compression to the back, and OSHA strives to have a very uh, solid case in the accuracy of these measurements using what we call validated methods, and that would be NIOSH revised lifting equation um, and other validated methods such as ACGIH-TLV that would focus more on hand and upper extremity um, hazards to measure those hazards and prove that they are above the action limits or what you could call, permissible or limits uh, that, and that's resulting in injuries and the potential for injuries and the hazards. So yes, OSHA uses such validated tools and tries to use validated tools like RNLE, ACGIH, hazard and activity level, and we've also used revised strain index. So yes, we those are part of can typically are part of OSHA's um, case developed to to pursue a general duty clause violation in ergonomics.
Thank you. With respect to the care facilities, an attendee's asking whether or not you investigated mental health hazards in those facilities.
Very
Is that
interesting
something?
question. um, you know what? That's not. I was trying to prepare for most of the potential questions in ergonomics. I did talk about psychosocial stressors and uh, absenteeism, short staffing. That is a great question, and I would, if that person could reach out to me, uh, I could certainly look into um, mental health. One component or aspect of that, which is something that um, I already mentioned it, would be workplace violence. Hopefully, such a condition wouldn't escalate or degenerate into workplace violence, but that there may be some type of those parameters in workplace violence. I would have to look further into that to adequately answer that question.
Okay, thanks, Mark. We do have a lot more questions, but we don't have a lot more time. So essentially, you see Mark's email on the screen, and if your question is a pressing one, please feel free to ping him at that address. But for now, I think we have to wrap things up. Just as a reminder, if you log in today with your registration email, you will get a link to an evaluation form that will qualify you for a certificate of completion, and it's worth one continuing education contact hour. You can learn more and register for our upcoming events at coeh.berkeley.edu. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, as I mentioned earlier. If you have any questions for us here at COEH Northern California, you can drop us a line at coehce@berkeley.edu. That's coehce@berkeley.edu. Apologies for not being able to get to all of your questions, but and there were some good ones. Please feel free to ping Mark with those questions. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye all.
Thanks for the opportunity to provide an addendum to our presentation on OSHA ergonomics, history, enforcement, and success stories. As a parent of 18, I in particular wanted to address this question on if OSHA investigates mental health in workplaces. Mental health and workplace stress are critical current public health concerns that can impact us at work and outside of work. We should all strive to address our personal and family mental health and workplace stress challenges. OSHA doesn't have specific standards on mental health or methods of assessing workplace stress or mental health during OSHA inspections, which was the question. OSHA does have a webpage and guidelines on workplace violence and provides outreach and guidance to those types of workplaces that should implement workplace violence prevention programs, and including engineering controls. In addition, OSHA does have a vast website with many topics that includes web pages on worker fatigue, suicide prevention, that includes the Crisis and Suicide Prevention Hotline 988, and workplace stress, that includes a workplace mental health fact sheet that you can find on the OSHA webpage. Go to the A to Z tab on OSHA.gov and you will find these web pages.